everybody, today I am in Carmel, Indiana, and actually, to be more specific, I'm in East Carmel. In fact, I'm in a neighborhood called Brookshire, which is a really big neighborhood and actually has some different parts to it. But in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about East Carmel specifically. And if you're looking for something really specific in Carmel, like a certain feel or an established age, we're going to see if East Carmel could be that fit for you. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Compton Home Group. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in places like Carmel, Indiana, Indianapolis, Indiana, or any of the surrounding cities and towns, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap a little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video. Now, we get people reaching out to us from all over the country with questions about places like Carmel, Indiana, or Indianapolis, Indiana, Westfield, Indiana, Fishers, Indiana, Noblesville, Indiana, all of the cities and towns that surround Indianapolis. So if you have questions at all about Indianapolis or any of those other cities and towns, then make sure you reach out any way that you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to make your move to anywhere in the Indianapolis metro. Hey everybody again, so today I'm in Carmel, Indiana, and more specifically, I'm in East Carmel, or I'm just on the east side of Carmel. Now, I've talked about Carmel before and the fact that it really has a few different parts to it, and you can break it down even more simple than that. You could say it really has two parts. You could say there's a West Carmel and an East Carmel, and those aren't absolute distinctions. You're not going to find on a map where it says East Carmel or West Carmel or something like that, but there is a distinctive feel if you explore enough of Carmel. If you just popped in and popped out maybe for the weekend or a day, you might not get the feel specifically, but it's hard to deny if you spend enough time in any of the parts of Carmel to figure out that there really is kind of an east side and there's a west side. So you got an east side of Carmel, west side of Carmel, and there's a section in Carmel though that could be maybe a mix of both. And it's kind of the middle section of Carmel, so that's kind of where the Arts and Design District, Midtown, and City Center all are. That one's a little bit unique, and it doesn't really feel right to categorize it as East Carmel or West Carmel necessarily. But I think if you get over into East Carmel enough, and you get over to West Carmel enough, you're gonna start to see a difference between the two. So today we're talking about East Carmel, and I'm walking through a neighborhood I mentioned called Brookshire, and Brookshire is full of, you can just see some of the homes that are around me right now, older homes. So this particular neighborhood, you have homes in here that were built in the 60s and 70s, and there's a decent percentage of the east side of Carmel that's like that. And that doesn't mean all of East Carmel is like that. No doubt about it, it's not. You can find homes that are brand new in East Carmel, some that are just being built and completed right now, and maybe in the last 5 years as well. And then you can have clusters of neighborhoods too that they were built in the 90s or early 2000s, somewhere in that range. So you can certainly find that. But if you're looking for a neighborhood similar to this one, where it's very mature, you have huge trees, some of these that are, of course, around me right now, and I'm walking on a sidewalk along the road. Not that West Carmel doesn't have sidewalks, it certainly does, but this right here is sort of what I would call a mature neighborhood, very mature neighborhood. And something like this is actually a little bit more difficult to find in West Carmel. Now, East Carmel, what I would define it as, is Carmel essentially goes from 96th Street on the south end all the way up to 146th Street, and it leaks across the north side of 146th Street in some parts, especially if you get up towards the Bridgewater Club and areas like that. But 146th Street generally is the northern border for Carmel with some exceptions. But if you go east of Keystone Parkway, east of that, then I would consider that certainly East Carmel. So as you get east of Keystone Parkway and further to the east border of Carmel is the White River, essentially. So once you cross the White River, then you get into Fishers. Now the White River, of course, you can't just cross that anywhere that you want. You can cross at 116th Street, 96th Street, or 146th Street. So the border between Fishers and Carmel, it's pretty distinct. And it's pretty easy to see that you're crossing from one into the other in most cases. But that section, just a little east of Keystone Parkway, and immediately to the east, and as you go a little further east, there are a lot of neighborhoods that look like this one. So very established looking, very mature looking. And then as you get further east in Carmel, of course, Carmel has expanded from the city center outward to the north, to the south, to the east and the west, and it ran out of room pretty quickly to the north and the south with 96th Street and 146th Street. But then as you got further east, all the way to the White River, well, things get a little bit newer out that way. But when I say newer, we could be talking 90s, 2000s. So some of those are some of those homes that I mentioned before in East Carmel that do exist. If you go north and south on Hazeldale Parkway, it is full of neighborhoods that are kind of in that particular range, that age range, 90s to the 2000s. Lots and lots of them sprinkled through there. But this neighborhood here is a little bit west of that, so it's right in that pocket between Keystone and Hazeldale. So this isn't the only one. There are several others around that are like this. And when you compare this particular field to a lot of West Carmel, it will not feel as mature. So you get a lot of newer homes in West Carmel. That's if you're looking for new construction homes, things like that. You can certainly find some here in East Carmel, but not nearly as many as what you can find in West Carmel. But the interesting thing too is that there's a price difference between East Carmel and West Carmel. Carmel as a whole is an expensive suburb. It's an expensive city when you're comparing it to other cities around Indianapolis. So there's only one on average that's a little bit higher, and that would be Zionsville. But when you compare Carmel to other cities in Indiana, Carmel is definitely one of the more expensive ones. But the east side of Carmel, it's moderately less expensive than what you'll find in West Carmel. So as I mentioned before, if you want to find new construction in Carmel, most of that's going to be over to the west. And it's not as if there are homes in the last 10 years, at least a lot of them that they've put up that are $300,000 or $400,000. They're usually north of that. They're in that $500,000 range, $600,000, $700,000, and then of course higher. So that's pulled the average price up on the west side. The east side, given that the homes generally aren't as big, they really aren't as many, and then you have a lot more affordable homes that were built in the 90s and the 2000s, it helps to keep the price a little bit, marginally cheaper than what you have on the west side. So you could get into homes that of course are built in the 60s, 70s, like these homes here in this neighborhood. You can get into some that are in the 90s and 2000s, but the thing that you're of course going to run into is the fact that some of the homes are still in the 60s and 70s when you walk in, or 80s when you walk in. So they may need some work. They may actually need, of course, a lot of updating, but they might really seriously need some work. And we're talking about the not so exciting stuff, like new windows and siding, things that, you really don't want to spend all your money on, but unfortunately, they're kind of important for sure. It's just not as exciting as a new kitchen or something like that. So you might run into that from time to time. Even a home that was built in the 90s or early 2000s. I mean, if a home was built in 2002, and this video is being filmed in 2021, that thing's almost 20 years old. It's 19 years old. So it could be at the point where it might need some updating, where things just look a little bit too 90s, because a home that's built in the early 2000s is probably going to be hanging on to the styles of the 90s. So you will run into that from time to time, but those are going to be the homes that are probably a little bit more affordable, the ones that need some work. But if you get into a neighborhood like this and all of those things have been taken care of, it has, let's say, a new roof, of course, new HVAC. A home that's built in the 60s and 70s is going to be through probably several cycles of that, but it might have a new kitchen, renovated floors, you name it on the inside. You're going to pay more for that because that renovation, all of that work that you might have done yourself, has already been taken care of. So there is a value on that. But if you're looking in Carmel, Indiana, and you're not interested in that newer neighborhood feel, one that doesn't really look like it's been around all that long, because it hasn't been around all that long, and you want a place that's just a little bit more established, of course, still close to everything that you're going to need on a daily basis. So while it might, when you're rolling through some of these neighborhoods, feel like you're not really close to a lot of commercial districts or areas, you really are. From where I'm standing right now, I'm within a 10-minute drive easily of at least a couple of grocery stores that I can think of off the top of my head, and several shops and restaurants, things like that. Easy drive from here. Even an easy bike from this particular neighborhood to some places that are relatively close by. But if this is the kind of feel that you're looking for, or look that you want in the place that you're living in Carmel, then this is probably the place to start. If you're open to all of Carmel, all ages, all feels, well then, of course, you can probably look in West Carmel too. But this particular part of Carmel, I think if you spend enough time here, you're gonna get the same feeling about it that I have, that it looks like it's been around longer. It looks more established and mature. So if you have questions at all about East Carmel, about West Carmel, or Carmel in general, then make sure that you reach out. And until the next one, we'll see you later.